This
Yeah,
conference will now be recorded.
I think too.
Awesome.
And then when we officially start the opening, as everybody else hears us talking, and when you officially start the opening, you should just make mention that this is being recorded. So.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for pointing that out, Debbie Lee.
And we're so excited to have Eric here with us. Atsuko and I do a lot of Q&As together, but it's special having Eric. And we've had people, then it feels if somebody misses the Q&A today, you can share it on your, you can share it with everybody who signed up for the movie. They can watch it when they want.
Yeah, for sure.
And maybe we can also tailor it a little bit to, well, we'll see if, I think the audience will find out of all of you who are here already, who's from Lower Manhattan. Maybe people who are already on, tell us where you're from, put in the chat where you are right now, so we have some idea of even talking about policy and things like that. It's nice to know.
Definitely. Wait another minute or two and then we'll get started here. So we have a good Long Island representation. We have someone from Greenpoint. And again, for folks who just signed in, we're just asking folks to type into the chat box where you are, so we can get a sense of where people are joining in from. All right, so we have someone from North Carolina and Manhattan.
Wow, nice.
And Maryland, Howard County, Maryland.
Yeah,
I
great.
grew up
Thank you.
not too far from Columbia, so that's nice that you're here, Pat Hershey.
Great.
Hersey, sorry, said your name wrong. Great.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Italy.
I think that's a yes. Okay. Should we get started?
Yes.
All right. So, hi everyone. Thanks for joining our post-screening Q&A session. I hope you enjoyed the film Microplastic Madness. It's about the 5th time I've seen the film, and every time I feel like I learn more about plastics and can't get enough of those little citizen scientists of ours. So it's really terrific production of Debby Lee, Cohen, and Atsuko, Quirk. They'll be joining us for the Q&A. Debby Lee is the film's director and executive director of the organization Cafeteria Culture. She also co-produced the film. Cafeteria Culture is an environmental education nonprofit based in New York City. And joining her is her colleague Atsuko, Quirk, Cafeteria Culture's digital media producer, as well as the co-director and co-producer of the film. I just learned today that we are their 70th Q&A group, their 70th, so that's quite a milestone. Congratulations, guys, and thank you for letting us share this very important film with others. And it's a special day as well because it's This weekend marks the 1-year anniversary of the film's premiere on September 27th of 2019. So the film is 1 year old and still going strong. And we're so excited to have you guys. Also joining us is Eric Ramos, who's a PhD in animal behavior and comparative psychology at City University of New York. And he appears in the film. You might have seen him in the film. He will be here as well. My name is Elaine Reynolds. I am a communications manager at the Battery Park City Authority, which is a government agency based in Lower Manhattan. Joining me is my colleague, Ryan Torres, Assistant Vice President of Parks Operations at the Authority, and she's also on the Zero Waste Committee of our agency. So it's great to be here today, and welcome again. Just a few housekeeping matters. I'll be muting everyone to avoid the background noise, but if at any point you have a question, please feel free to unmute yourself to ask the question using your microphone. If you happen to be unmuted, just please mute yourself if you're not speaking. If we can't make out a question because too many people are speaking at the same time, or if you just prefer to put something in writing and not speak during the Q&A, feel free to add questions you have for the panelists into the chat box, which Ryan and I will be monitoring throughout, and we can read them aloud on your behalf. And we'll get to as many questions as we can in the limited time we have today. Debby Lee was generous enough to say we can go over by a few minutes past 5. We'll be compiling the rest of the questions so we don't get to, so that we can get back to you, follow up with you by email after the screening. So thanks again, everyone. And Debby, I guess I just wanted to get started with a question for you and Atsuko. So in coming up with the idea of making a film about plastic, how did you decide to spotlight microplastics in particular? And why would you say microplastics is something that we should be worrying about now, still in 2020? Is plastic pollution a public health threat, would you say? And if so, what can we do as individuals in the New York tri-state area and beyond to lessen the problem?
Okay,
I know those are several questions at once.
Let's take some notes. You'll remind us of those questions. So first of all, when we started making the movie in 2017, and I'll just give a little background information, Atsuko will jump in. Cafeteria Culture is a small nonprofit working toward an environmental education nonprofit working towards zero waste, plastic-free, climate-smart schools and communities. And we do that with youth leadership, as well as teaching media production frames almost all of our work that we do with youth in schools and in after-school programs. And we started in 2009. We've been working primarily, we find partner schools primarily in lower income communities of color, in schools that have multiple challenges. So we don't typically seek out a school that is like a so-called top academic school. We look for schools where we're challenged, so that when we're developing the curriculum, it can be replicated. And we're finding out only recently in the last 6 months that this replication can happen. It can be scaled up, not just in New York City and not just across the US, but now we're seeing it across the world. To Stefano from Italy, we're like, we'd love to bring the movie to Italy. We're showing it now in Japan, New Zealand, Europe, many parts of German-speaking Europe, and Switzerland, Germany. So we're super excited to find the universality of this message of youth at this time. When we started in 2017 making this movie, we didn't start with the idea that we were making the movie. We started with a program in a school like we do. And this was at PS 15K, the school in the movie. And it was a very, very special school. And we had this opportunity through funding from the US EPA, a grant that was an interdisciplinary plastic-free waters educational grant. And we knew once we got into that school, we had the curriculum that was around microplastics, and people didn't even know what microplastics were then, most people. And we went into this school, and it was a really incredible school.
Yeah, and then also, you know, student storytelling was really inspiring, and the strong tie of the community, you know, made us feel like this story needs to go out from this classroom. This, you know, everybody needs to know about this. But also for coming back to your question, microplastic specific that we chose. Part of it is that once you talk about when you talk about plastic pollution, then of course you have to talk about microplastics. And when we teach those fifth graders, back then they were still in fourth grade, then they learn always the entrance is like, Eric, that plastic litter on the street goes out in the ocean, hurting marine animals. That's the entrance. And then even after they learned the, plastic is going to smaller and smaller pieces, and that's called microplastics, right? And then after a while, we talk about microplastics. Still, kids were sort of sticking with the idea of hurting marine animals and fish. And then this microplastic problem is, that's a big part of the problem, but that's not the, only problem. We have much bigger problem now, right? That we started discovering it's in soil, drinking water, or in the air. We are breathing in it, and then that interestingly that you mentioned the human health, which will probably coming out in a new study this year, next year. That's like coming up, right? So that what we learned as we go of the movie making, we learned with students that how deep this problem is, and so that without talking about microplastics, that then we cannot really talk about plastic problem. So
and we're still learning. We're still learning. The journey is not over. And that's one of the things about making a documentary that's so challenging. Within those 3 years of the production, so many new studies came out, new information came out. And so we were constantly working to make sure not only that our curriculum was up to date, because we're piloting curriculum, we can do that. That's one of the exciting things for us about our work, that we can take the most cutting edge research and apply it to education. And then share it with others. But then also in terms of making a movie, a documentary, that's a whole other challenge. And we're really fortunate to have an impact campaign that continues the journey, and the youth advocacy to continue getting this message out of youth leadership for a plastic-free future, and to continue to be able to share up-to-date information. There was a recent study that came out about microplastics in soil, and a lot's being talked about that right now, and even about how the transferring of microplastics from soil or nanoplastics into plants. And then so all these different ways, breathing, eating, all these different entry points of microplastics. And of course, health, human health. I think animal health is the first thing, which I'd love to hear from Eric, but you can see in the movie when Eric comes into the classroom, and even when Atsuko and I first met Eric, we were not just charmed, we were wowed and taken with his information, because as humans, animals are so relatable. And sometimes it's easier to relate to wildlife than to humans. And then that next step is really thinking about, well, how does this impact us or me? And then people are more likely to take action when they understand those consequences.
Yeah. Eric, can you speak to that a bit in terms of the wildlife and, the effects you've been seeing of plastics on wildlife during and since the film's production?
Yeah, thank you for those questions. They're great ones. Microplastics really do big impacts. I think it's difficult to conceive of how until you physically see it. Sadly, it's not that difficult to physically see if you spend time on the ocean or around the edge of the water, because we tend to clean up our stuff in places, and places that are not managed have good indications of what's happening. And I spent a lot of years on islands in the Caribbean and Belize, where it's not all islands are like this, but in Belize, on these islands, the currents bring in large amounts of garbage. and enormous amounts of plastic of every size. And I would watch this float around the dolphins that I'd study in those areas. And part of what I was talking about in the film is how when they echolocate, you know, a dolphin can't necessarily see plastic as different than other food, and depending on what kind of species it is and what its awareness is, it might actually eat those things. You know, like if I put out a fake apple that looks real enough on a table right in your kitchen, on your kitchen table, you wouldn't necessarily feel like blame yourself for having grabbed that apple and trying to take a bite. Understanding that animals didn't evolve to make those decisions because they weren't expecting to have plastic pollution in their environment. So we see a range of effects with animals, from them consuming it, and now since the movie, like actually, there have been a lot more studies showing animals that have, whales and dolphins that have eaten enough large garbage to have it impact their digestion and cause death, and animals that are acquiring other kinds of symptoms, like different kinds of imbalanced hormonal production from eating, you know, large amounts of, you know, small particulate plastics and such that come not just in the water but in their prey. And so the fish that they're eating are eating other fish that are eating other fish that are eating other fish, and probably at every level those fish are chomping down on plastics, you know, and so it accumulates in all sorts of ways. So there are a lot of ways now really well recognized how it affects animals, and it's similar ways that it affects us. So it is difficult to see, you know, in the wild.
And Elaine, it's interesting, you asked about about health and human health, but even though, you know, you see, like with tobacco, how many years it took to prove something. I'm a cancer patient, and I worked with plastics for years. And it's part of the reason why I'm passionate about the health issues around plastic and about making this movie with cafeteria culture. And I'm not willing to wait. You know, I feel like, well, we don't have to wait another 40 years or 20 years for somebody to prove that this is going to be a problem, because we can already see that there are implications. We already know that we're ingesting it. That's been proved. We know we're ingesting it. And then to begin to understand that plastics, as we say in the movie, are made of chemicals, and then they're attracting only more chemicals when they're in the aquatic environment, and that we don't understand yet with humans, but we're beginning to understand that with wildlife, and we can begin to predict how, as this increases within our food chain and within our environment overall, that of course it's going to affect us, and we don't have the luxury to wait for it to be proved. We have to take action now.
We have to act now. Absolutely. It's becoming an urgent issue as is climate change, and it's part of the larger environmental framework and discussions that we have to keep on top of. So we have a special guest today, Anila Tai, and she has a question for us from the chat box. She's wondering if there's a plan to update the movie, I guess to have some kind of sequel to Microplastics.
Yeah, actually, we don't have a exact plan yet, actually. But at some point, some information may be outdated. Then maybe we could, you know, just update those small parts. And but yeah, we don't have any exact plan yet. But we'll kind of have to see.
And we do have a really we have a great YouTube channel, and our YouTube channel has 28 million views and 48,000 subscribers. So we would love to make some supplemental videos to the movie. Like typically with documentaries, you don't go back and change it. It's a lot of issues to do that, but we can supplement it. And basically we're hoping to get funding to do that. So if you know of anybody who is interested in funding this continuation of the story, we'd love for you to get in touch with us and help us with that part of it.
Also, we want to make, you know, like a dub version for other languages. And I'm working on, you know, making a Japanese dub version, and we're looking for funding, actually. And then also we want to make a Spanish dub version, you know. So if you know anybody, that would be great.
Yeah, spreading the message globally. That's great. So we have Leanne A, who kindly shared a link with us about a short video of evidence-based health concerns with microplastics in fish. Very interesting. Leanne, did you have any questions or comments for us? We'll definitely be sure to watch the clip when we can. All right, it looks like Anila has another comment. She says it would be so interesting to see how kids around the world are doing similar or different things to address the same issue. Speaking of that, do you guys know of any schools outside of the U.S. that are undertaking any efforts in this regard?
Yeah, we certainly do, and we've partnered with them. In fact, that was before we made this movie. We had a partner project with the city of Tokyo that Atsuko will tell us a little bit more about. It's on our YouTube channel. There's a half-hour video of 5th graders from a school in Tokyo partnering with this same school in Brooklyn. That was part of what helped us to start this whole program. And now we're doing more and more with schools around the world, and we hope to partner with more schools everywhere, more organizations everywhere. Atsuko?
Yeah, so there are a couple of organizations actually have a curriculum around microplastics, and also we are in touch with a high school which has the marine science department, marine science major in the high school, and they have been doing microplastic research and study, and also they actually host I think last year that they did the microplastic youth conference in Japan, inviting a school from Taiwan, from LA, and a couple of other high schoolers to Japan and did that. So there are movements and there are things going on, and we would love to find out more. And we are in touch with festivals in film festivals in India, Qatar, and so it's like really growing.
New Zealand, Europe. So we're starting to really get this, like, take the temperature of what's going on with curriculum. We're starting to begin to understand it, and we're also sharing the curriculum that you see in the movie. We have 3 units. The first unit that's focused on citizen science, which we're now calling community science, and it's been piloted, it's been in a beta version, and teachers in New York City have been using it. We've been sharing it in teacher trainings. And now we're just about ready to share that with everyone for free, which is super exciting. So hopefully we'll have more information soon, and we know of other organizations from Algalita to Five Gyres, other US organizations that also have curriculum, Kokoa Hawaii Foundation, that are sharing different kinds of curriculum, but related to what we're doing as well, which is so exciting to see.
Yeah, super innovative. While we're on the topic of curriculum, Ryan, I think you had a question for Eric. Do you want to shoot?
I did. I was wondering if during your, studying to become, a marine biologist and all, and all that hardcore studying, is part of sustainability and microplastics or ocean pollution, does that even come up during that kind of curriculum, or is that like I'm going to become a marine person, and then I care about the environment, so I'm going to learn more about sustainability, or is that something that's kind of zippered together naturally?
I would say just by the nature of when that kind of education was more broadly available, that for a lot of people, my age and above in my career, it wasn't as integral necessarily as just strict biological knowledge. And I do think so much of that is just how much these changes have happened more recently and kind of trickled down into the systems of education, where I never learned anything about anything related to sustainability or climate change or the environment before high school, maybe. And I went to specialized high schools in New York City, all of them, and it just wasn't part of the education. So I learned it a different route. I'd venture a guess that a lot of it just has to do with, where you're from, the environment and the culture. And in New York City, I never found much of a culture, which is why when I was invited to participate in this project, I was very amazed. I mean, I was kind of dumbfounded. I walked into the class and like kids were saying stuff that I was like, I just figured that out. Like I just figured that out. Like I probably, it's totally easy to learn if you just learn it young. And in the time that I work in the fields, I just worked in Mexico for a couple months this year, where we're around lots of little kids in this community in Guerrero, in La Baja de Potosí, where we do work with whales, and with a project I work with does a lot of outreach. And these kids are so smart, and I was, it's like, yeah, it kind of just, I was like, wow, they're educated, and now they're telling me the things that I need to know. And I think that it's really essential. You know, I don't know how much, I think now it's probably more a part of the paradigm, but I still think that it's not enough. And getting in very young, not having it be like something you learn in college as like a academic interest of sustainability, but having it be part of what you do always, like, you know, learning to be civil and learning to do other practical things.
And I think it's so hard for educators. I mean, that's one of the things that we try to address, and we get a lot of questions around that. You know, you look at climate education and you look at plastic-free education, that it's a lot of work for educators. They have so many requirements that they have to fulfill, and they have a lot of new things they have to learn. And I think there's an incredible opportunity in particular for nonprofits like ours to be a part of this piloting and developing of new curriculum. And that's part of the reason why we're so dedicated to just getting it out there and getting the movie out there, for sharing it for free, in particular with schools that don't have a lot of resources, so that it's the information that we're sharing in environmental education, climate education, plastic-free education is equitable and available for all students. There's some great questions from Pat, by the way. Oh, sorry, Atsuko, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Astrid shared on the chat that plastics is typically incorporated in oceanography and marine science courses. So there are some things going on.
Yeah, if I can just add to that, but just like Eric said, you got to get them early. And those people are already looking for that type of information. And the other thing is that I just wanted to congratulate you on this wonderful piece of work, because just being able to stretch from somebody at that age to incorporating information all the way to scientists and making it so accessible is wonderful. And I have a 12-year-old who started to learn about plastics in North Carolina schools during elementary school. And he hears too much about this stuff from me, because I'm an oceanographer and I work on ocean acidification and these things, harmful algal blooms. So it's easy for him to despair. And it was wonderful to show him this documentary. So like, listen, this is what can happen. Look what they were able to do. There's a lot of empowerment going on. And I could tell in his eyes, like, oh, okay, so being upset about that can actually get you somewhere. So I really wanted to say it was a wonderful documentary. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Astrid. That's so nice to hear. And let us know if you'd like to share the movie with your son's school in North Carolina. We'd love for, maybe you can help present it and do a Q&A with the school community or your broader community. That's fantastic.
I already sent an email to his science teacher.
Great. And we really, you know, that's part of the reason you can see in the movie that coming back to this idea of interdisciplinary education, where so often we think about that the issue should only be taught in science, and that's true with climate education as well. And part of, I think, what the movie portrays is that there's real value in interdisciplinary education, that there's an art teacher, there might be a PE teacher, there might be an English language arts teacher. There's so many different ways, and in particular, how we weave all of this into the issue of civics, which is basically undertaught or not taught at all anymore in this country. And as we see, that might be the issue of the moment.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. That was great. We have a question that came in from Pat a short while ago. Pat, you asked if there's anything R&D on filters, on washers, dryers to decrease microfibers. I've seen bags to decrease microfibers in washers. Is it greenwashing?
It's absolutely needed. It's a great question. And, you know, often people talk about after they see the movie, oh, should we get rid of all our polyester clothes and just buy cotton clothes? And no, that is not the solution, because as scientists are telling us, there's also cotton microfibers. And even though we think that might have less impact, you know, we don't know for sure. It's not good either. And cotton has other issues. And we absolutely need to look at how our clothes are being manufactured to begin with, and also how they're washed. And the washing machine industry needs our pressure. We don't really know of anybody yet. I did see someplace, and I can't think of it right now where it is. I have to look for it and get back to you, Pat. I'd like to let you know, because I think at this moment in time, the fashion industry, the washing machine industry needs, without a doubt, more pressure to make change. And they've been very, very slow to come to making change. You know, yes, there are these, there's the Cora ball, there's other things that you put inside your machine, but they don't capture a big enough percentage of the microfibers, I don't think. And I think also they're not widely enough available. People aren't using those, and it should be the responsibility of the manufacturer. It's not that, I mean, I've done just a little experiment on a washing machine, just putting a little filter on there, and you see how much is caught very quickly in one load. You know, you do a load of, you know, of older clothes or whatever, you can see it and you think like, wow, this is ridiculous. This isn't that high tech.
Yeah.
And she also, Pat, you also asked about extended producer responsibility, which is a great question. And there are more and more local laws, local policy that's being directed towards corporate and extended producer manufacturer responsibility, which is so key to really addressing systemic change and really getting to the root of the problem and turning off the tap of plastic. And the bill, the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act 2020, that was introduced by Senator Tom Udall and Congressman Lowenthal, is the first comprehensive federal bill that really addresses that to some degree. And we have a lot more work to do. We have some great examples in Canada, and I think, and in Europe, especially right now. So it's without a doubt a super important component to reducing the amount of, in particular, single-use plastics that are being used.
Great. So Leanne had a question. She asked, have you been seeing setbacks with COVID-19? Here in New Hampshire, we're not allowed to bring our own bags to stores for several months, and we're still not allowed to bring our own containers to shops from the bulk bins. Is there an impact there?
I'll start and then I'll let, I'm sorry, I don't want to hog the conversation, but just to say that, of course, all across the country, as we know, laws that were worked really hard to put into place and some that had not been enforced yet were pushed back. And as many people in the environmental movement sort of took a step back because of COVID and said, well, we have to focus on people's health and making sure people can pay their rent and have jobs and all these other things and safety, the plastics industry went into high gear without shamelessly, and lobbying and pushing harder and harder to block any kind of plastic-free legislation and to push back. In New York City, we're finally enforcing our plastic, it's actually New York State, we're finally enforcing our plastic bag bill that our students have worked on for over 5 years. It's like finally October 19th, a judge finally said it's okay to go ahead. You know, there's lawsuit after lawsuit. So one of the things I can say about addressing it locally, the whole issue about bags, is to encourage your community. There's some great examples of, yes, bring your own bag and offer to pack it yourself, unless they say you can't even bring it in the store. Really push for explaining why and show that, well, New York City's doing this. You can bring your own bag in and you can politely pack it yourself so nobody has to even touch your own bag. There have been studies that have shown that the coronavirus doesn't last any longer on plastic. I mean, it doesn't last any longer on reusable fabrics or other kinds of materials than it does on plastic. And in fact, it might last longer on plastic, so that it's not even, and same with our reusables, and people will often take your credit card, your money, and then they don't want to take your reusables. There's many arguments for this. And we just have to work harder and look at examples now as bigger cities start to bring back reusables. And we have on our website under Take Action, I have a link right up there. There's right near the top of the page of I forgot the organization exactly, but it says for COVID-19 specifically take action.
That's great, Debbie Lee. We can hopefully share that link with the group so that they can check that out themselves as well. And Diana also put a comment in mentioning just sort of what you were talking about, how the plastic bag ban was supposed to take effect in March in New York City and was stopped by COVID, and that she sees styrofoam containers in delis. And, you know, when I go to Fairway, just thinking about my everyday experience, they almost force plastic bags on you at Fairway. That's my, I mean, not to target Fairway specifically, but it's kind of troubling because I don't think they have any sense as a company of the impact that they're making on the environment. And, you know, they almost don't like it when you bring your own bag because they're just in such a habit of giving you one. And, you know, it's, so hopefully we can see change there in companies and grocery stores and other companies. So Anila had a question. She was asking about where were the kids in Mexico getting their information and how is it different than what same age kids know in New York City?
That's a great question. I wondered that myself a lot, and part of it was that the group I work with there, the Whales of Guerrero, had done a lot of kind of environmental education, and a lot of it was geared around marine mammals in the first place, because marine mammals were like the big salient thing that the kids could connect to, just like here, and and there were a lot of animals right there. But it was years, I think, of exposure to this education over time and kind of this awareness that seemed to just seep in. Like the thing that I noticed about living, what I really liked about Mexico was living in a place where it was a small community, so the kids were kind of everywhere, and I knew these kids for many years, and some of them, you know, like I would join them for like Goonie style adventures like I was 13, but I'd known them for like 5 or 6 years, and in that time I'd seen them grow and just learn things in an environment where information was steadily given to them over time, and it kind of seemed to seep in. And I think that's the difference, is just like having information. You know, I don't think there was a big difference. It's just that these kids learned it in a different way, but they could also see it personally in this way and connect to it because they could see the garbage on their beaches and in their environment. And I think just like kids everywhere, they were, you know, super smart and capable of picking up a lot, probably, and changing more than adults often are. So I think in kids, it's kind of just like shocking at how flexible they are. But in the end, I realized, I was like, these kids are just as smart as the kids in New York. They picked up on the information because they were given the information, and they learned some lesson from it that just can take other people longer if they're not explicitly shown, you know, what the effects are.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Does anyone else have a question they want to ask? I had a question. So is New York City on target to achieve its zero waste goal of sending zero waste to landfills by 2030? How much of that can be accomplished by the reduction of the use of plastics in particular?
Very, very sadly, we are not at all on target. There's been a lot of criticism of our mayor right now, who started out with such dedication to zero waste goals. And we had an amazing commissioner of sanitation, and we only found out recently when she stepped down from her job to put in her bid to run for mayor, which is kind of exciting, that that she actually was frustrated by not being able to push forward on these zero waste goals, including expanding organics collection or composting to all schools and to all neighborhoods across New York City, as was planned even before the pandemic. So we are way behind on the goals. There are many of us, many organizations, as well as the Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, and now Bronx solid waste advisory boards that are working on this issue with our legislators. And of course, with COVID, it pushes us back because of budget cuts, but there are many of us who are fighting and saying, like many things climate related, that the investment now, if we don't put that investment in now, not only are we seriously threatening the health of many communities by, you know, waste inequity, but also just waste hauling, waste transfer stations, incineration, and landfilling. But we're also we're contributing to the climate crisis, and we can no longer afford to cut that money out of that budget. So we have a lot to do, and that should be it should be part of the agenda as we decide who we want to elect for our mayor, and actually in all agendas as we're, you know, we make these decisions, you know, to really pressure people running for office to add this to their platform.
Yeah,
Did I answer
absolutely.
that question well enough? Maybe there's more specifics, but.
No, that was terrific. Debbie Lee or Atsuko, are there any particular governmental or grassroots actions that, you know, can help achieve this goal that we should keep in mind in the coming weeks and months, despite the pandemic and the fact that, you know, we're still sort of living in quarantine mode, but anything we can do kind of in the immediate future?
Yes, so in terms of policy, I'll start with that and I'll let Atsuko go and join after that. If you're in New York City right now, we have a straw bill coming up. We've passed the styrofoam bill. We have the bag bill that will be enforced, and now there's a straw bill, which is kind of a low-hanging fruit. It's plastic straw by request. It's not a difficult bill to pass, and we're basically just waiting for the speaker of our city council to bring it to the floor. So there's actually a tweet-a-thon going on, organized by the organization Beyond Plastics and member organizations like us to pressure Corey Johnson, our speaker, to get that bill passed. Statewide, the governor had promised a statewide styrofoam ban, and there are a lot of questions around that, and we should continue pressuring our governor. Maryland had some, I think because we have somebody here from Maryland, I think their statewide styrofoam bill is just being enforced now, which is super exciting. So it's really important for everybody who's all over to check out your local legislation. It's very, very important. I'm trying to think who else is here. Italy, doing amazing work on climate literacy. The first country to have a mandate for climate literacy is amazing. And
wow.
Just so you know, Stefano, we're all inspired by Italy. And we're excited to see where that goes, and especially in this time of coronavirus. And then there's national legislation, that Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act, the same senator, U.S. senator and congressman who introduced that legislation just introduced a bill yesterday to reduce plastic nurdles, those tiny pellets. We talk about it briefly in the movie, but nobody's holding corporations responsible for it, and they're leaking into the marine environment by the trillions per year. We find them on the beaches in New York City. They're everywhere, and it's inexcusable, and this has been going on for decades. So finally, there's an opportunity. I think that's also low-hanging fruit. Like, we should be able to that should be a bipartisan bill in this country to get passed as soon as possible. And we should all be speaking out about our health concerns as well as our environmental concerns. And you can check out our Twitter feed at Cafeteria Coup. We've been tweeting out about that and retweeting, and we'll keep up on that. And we don't have as much policy on our Instagram, but that's at CAFCU, CAFCU. I'll put those links up, or Atsuko will hold up.
Yeah, we'll be sure to check those out. And, you know, I think of those beads. There we go, Atsuko. Thanks for sharing that. Oh, that's great. They should be downright prohibited. I mean, I can't believe, you know, that they are even mainstream, you know, in our products. Ryan and Leanne, in that order. Ryan, did you want to ask your question?
I was just curious, in you know, what's your top 3 things that I can do at home that would just do my part, you know, to help with microplastics? Like,
Ryan,
start right.
The first thing I would say before even that, I mean, the individual action is amazing, and I'm going to let Atsuko and Eric talk to that. But get on the phone and call your congressperson. Actually, I think your congressperson probably has signed on to the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act, but our U.S. senators have not. Gillibrand and Schumer have not yet signed on. So just pick up the phone and call and say you're a constituent. It's super, super important. And tell them about your children, the work you do, and why you're concerned. Like, make your story personal. And then Atsuko and Eric, I'll stop talking.
Yeah, and also, what you can do is to talk about this to others. That's very important, as much as what you do personally. So, you are one person and it becomes 2 people and 4 people, multiplies. And there a lot of people kind of know about this, but not deep enough or not like motivated enough to do something. So, then you just keep talking to people is very important. That's what I think.
Yeah, so it sounds like just spreading awareness itself is one of the most important things. So Leanne was asking about TerraCycle. Do you know much about TerraCycle? I'm doing my best to get rid of things responsibly, and I found their service useful, but I don't know for sure what they do with everything. Do you know whether they're truly making a positive difference?
Yes, they are making a positive difference because they're now part of Closed Loop. They're doing some bigger scaled work, that working with large corporations that make an enormous amount of plastic. And that's really where the change matters. And it's not that it's not important to save your Brita water filter or your pouch but honestly, the bigger action is to avoid buying those things and make sure you are tagging those manufacturers. Put it on social media, tag us, we'll repost it. Let them know that you're not happy that they're making this product that we have to then ship, and then it goes to this place and we don't really know what happens to it. We should be having closed loop cycle. We should be designing not for a linear design. It should be a circular design, and that's what we should all be pushing for right now.
Great, thank you, Debbie. And thanks for responding to Anila's question about where she can go online to find out which political candidates are eco-friendly. That's a great question, Anila. Thank you for joining us today.
And Anila, you can also, you can also really look up I know it's work, but wherever you are, that you look up your own legislators and really call them and ask them, call their office and just say, what environmental bills, even if you can't find it, what's their policy? What are they behind? What can we do to pressure them? Can I bring a group of youth to speak with them? That's always a great way. No, I don't think any policymaker can say no to youth right now. They might say no to adults, but I don't think they'll say no to youth. And if you do, just document it and post it on social media, and you can bet you'll have a meeting, so you'll get a lot of youth support.
Yeah, you'll probably get more response than one of us would, Anila. Ryan, I thought we could turn to Battery Park City in particular for a minute for parks operations. And we had a great achievement at BPCA recently. We've attained gold level true certification, which rates how well facilities minimize waste. Is that right, Ryan? By decreasing office waste going to landfill by 90% over the past year, striving for zero waste.
Yep.
And, in spite of that, how bad really is the plastics problem, would you say, in Battery Park City? Do we have a sense of that?
Yeah, I mean, our goal was staff oriented because I think, like everybody here, the behavior is step one, in helping, making sure that everybody understands and sees what it is that they're looking for. So I think that plastic, whether that's a bag, a wrapper, your lunch, your coffee, or whatever form that might be, I think plastic is obviously an issue. However, due to the fact that we were able to receive our certification, that was significantly reduced in not only in the amount that came in general, because that is the overall goal, is to just not even have it. It's not about making sure that it ends up at the recycling or it ends up, in the right. And it's about not even bringing it in. So I think we were able to do that. It is a constant, it's constant education, it's constant reminder. Obviously, COVID has, you know, brought up some questions that we're still trying to figure out how to answer, but we continue to work towards it. And we're looking forward to all of the next steps that Battery Park City Authority will be taking to just increase our zero waste goals, to the community, to the parks, to the open space, to our operations, and everything at large.
Yeah, it's exciting times in Battery Park City. And I was just curious about, you know, schools again, you know, Debby, Lee, or Atsuko, if you have any further insight on how schools within and around Battery Park City can take action, how they can participate in plastic-free lunch, other zero waste initiatives. Can you speak to that?
Well, first of all, I'd just like to say that some of the schools in Battery Park in Lower Manhattan, for those of you who are on the call don't know where Battery Park City is, there have been some public schools that have done amazing work already that we've partnered with over the years, from the esteemed Stuyvesant High School. Their green team was doing amazing work. I don't know how it's going at this moment in time. Everything's a bit on hold, as well as PS 29, is that it?
89.
89, sorry.
Yeah.
There are 1,800 schools in New York City, and I get that school, I always mix it up. But the principal there, and they share it with the middle school, they also were interested. We'd love for them to do a plastic-free lunch day. It used to be there were a lot of parents interested in sustainability and zero waste goals in that school when, you know, some years ago. I don't know if there still are. But like the 1,800 schools across New York City, we have a how to lead a plastic-free lunch day. One of the amazing things that we share, and one of the amazing things that came out of this movie was shortly after we premiered the movie, we had a Q&A similar to this, but live, in the days where we had live Q&As with the school food director and students from the movie. And the students from the movie pressured the school food director to have a citywide plastic-free lunch day. His first response was, well, I think we maybe can reach that goal in about 5 years. And of course, the students were like, well, 5 years isn't soon enough. And we worked really hard with the directors of school food in New York City, and they agreed to lead a citywide plastic-free lunch day in May 2020. Of course, then we had the pandemic, and we did a lot of work for this that's been put on hold. But they're still interested, and we will not give up. And it might happen first in some other school district somewhere, which is great, because we do think that just like with the styrofoam ban in New York City, styrofoam tray ban in schools, that sometimes you can start a pilot small. You can start, as Atsuko said, one person, you do one class, you do one school. People need to see change. They need to be able to envision it. And once they can envision it, they're like, oh my gosh, that wasn't that hard. Why don't we do this in our whole district? And then why don't we do this in the whole, across New York City? And why don't we do this across the whole state? And now that's how Maryland in Baltimore's public schools, they're no longer using styrofoam trays because of New York City was able to build these partnerships with urban school districts around the country. So really, we do believe in that as a recipe for change. And we really encourage you that, you know, if you are a person, again, coming back to like, what can I do? You know, if you're one person, find that other person and start piloting change. Ryan, we can't wait to hear what you do at your children's school. We're going to be watching for you. We really do believe that that's an excellent way to really to accelerate change, which we can no longer wait. We don't have that luxury to wait anymore.
Show the movie in your school, you know, in your children's school. That's probably the good first step.
And it can be a PTA. We've done it with schools. We did it with school in Windsor Terrace in Brooklyn, where they had Friday night pizza night, and it was packed with families and kids. And some of the kids were little, and they came in and out. They had the city council member come who had worked with us on the bag and styrofoam ban bills. So that was really interesting. He came and spoke. The principal was there. It was packed, and it was it's also very much an intergenerational message. And I also just want to let everybody know that hopefully by the end of this week, we have a new initiative and a new resource to share that's a do-it-yourself street litter survey. There's a lot of focus now on cleaning up street and, of course, beach litter as always, but street litter now because of the cuts in sanitation in cities everywhere. And we would like to encourage these great community groups, and sometimes they're impromptu or sometimes it's just one person, to collect the data along with the litter. And we're trying to present basically what our students did, our 4th and 5th grade students, that in a citizen science or community science way that you can collect this data, share it with us, and we can help to push forward policy with good community science data.
Thank you, Debbie. Yeah, it's like a web of positive influence, and it was so exciting to see the kids in the film collect that litter so meticulously too. I mean, so much better than some of us would, and you know, their passion for this is so inspiring to all of us. So thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? Any final questions for our panelists today? We're running out of time, but
I have one more question for.
I work for Department of Education and working for Sustainability Elementary School in Brooklyn. And I was also wondering, thank you. Also wondering, like, how can we as a school? I talked to the science teacher, but she actually has loads of works from her own stage, and I encourage her to apply the the lunch cultural program. But then like the process is very long. We wondering like it seems like it's powerless and hopeless to get into this program for our school, even though our principal, the whole school is all about sustainability. So how school like us, we are also Title I. How can we like get into the program like you and during this COVID-19 time? And I personally pick up a lot of garbage around the school, and I even did it today, this morning. And it's like even more and more garbage. I don't understand. Maybe people had like like give up some hopes, so they litter even more. So this morning the amount of garbage is like tremendous. I don't know how. I was thinking about counting them, but it's really the first thing is to source them, and there's really not a bag or a bucket or a form of like maybe like cardboard bags or something to source it out. I was sourcing it by myself, but it's too much. So I don't know.
That's so great that you're doing this. If the science teacher's too busy, don't rely on the science teacher. Then go find another teacher, or it could be the PTA, or it could be most schools are supposed to have a sustainability coordinator. It could be the PE teacher. It doesn't have to be the science teacher. It could be a group of parents. It could be an after-school program, and host a virtual screening at your school. Most of the schools. Do you mind us asking what school you're affiliated with?
We are PS 971.
Great. I just put our email address in there. You can write to us, and we'll follow up with you. We'd love for you to have a virtual screening at your school. Let me put that link again here. And that's a great way to start, and maybe even to get the science teacher excited, and then not feel like the science teacher has to do it.
Love to do it. She's just like too much work for her to really like get into this.
And maybe even wait a week or two. We're finding even with our partner schools that just everybody's overwhelmed at the moment. And so maybe starting it with even organizing it for them, organizing it for the whole school. We've done that with some schools, like open it up, and we can help you with that, to organize a movie screening night with the whole school, just like we're all here today. And then we'd love to do a Q&A with you for your school.
So how can I get your email?
It's right there. I put it up. Are you on the chat? Can you see it?
I'm not.
You can just go to our website. Just go to our website, Cafeteria Culture or microplasticmadness.org. Just go, and I'm hoping that that Elaine will share that with everybody after in an email. If you just go to our website, there's a little envelope icon. You could just hit that icon. It will come to us, and then we'll get back to you.
I see. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, and another thing is, Thanks so much, guys. Another thing, if you'd like to send me an email, I can respond to your email with Debbie's information that she just provided. So I'd be happy to follow up with you directly. So feel free to, you got our emails hopefully earlier. So feel free to reply all or just reply to me and I'll get you that information.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, guys. Well, thanks so much. Is there anything else before we wrap up?
We just want to say thank you, everybody. Thank you, Battery Park City Authority. Thank you, Elaine and Ryan. Eric, you continue to be a superstar marine mammologist to children all over the world and adults all over the world. Thank you so much for being a part of our movie. And thank you, everybody, for doing whatever you can to accelerate change and to reduce this, you know, the horrible plastic pollution that's becoming a crisis. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Elaine, for inviting us and then doing a screening. And then thank you so much for watching the movie, everybody. And nice to see you. And Eric, nice to see you again. And, you know, yes, please, let's keep in touch. And if you can, you know, come up with some ways that you can connect to our students again, that would be wonderful.
Maybe that's our next supplemental video. Maybe that's the update.
There it
Thank
is.
you, everybody, for your ideas today. You're inspiring us.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Atsuko, Debbie Lee, Ryan, my partner in crime. And thanks to everyone who joined us today. We really appreciate your questions and comments, and we would love to stay in touch with you about microplastics and environmental action moving forward. Feel free to reach us. Atsuko has the social media of Cafeteria Culture, the great nonprofit organization that produced and directed this film. And you have our contact information at Battery Park City Authority. So we look forward to staying in touch with everyone here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Have a great night, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.